Introducing our guest and program today is David Insera. Mr. Insera is Research Assistant for National Security and Cybersecurity in our Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign and National Security Policy. He specializes in cyber and homeland security policy, including the protection of critical infrastructure. In addition to co-authoring research papers on these topics, he contributes regular posts on national security to our link on our think tank's blog, The Foundry. Mr. Insera holds his Bachelor of Arts degree in Government and Economics from the College of William and Mary. Please join me in welcoming David Insera. David?
Thank you all for coming today. It's my honor today to introduce to you Michael Dougherty. Dougherty? Doherty, I'm sorry about that. Michael Dougherty is the president and CEO of LabMD, a uropathology laboratory in Atlanta, Georgia. He was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, the oldest of 3 children of 2 Detroit City police officers. He is an entrepreneur that has worked in the surgical and laboratory medical markets since his graduation from the University of Michigan, where he graduated with a degree in economics and psychology. Founding LabMD in 1996, Mike's company has touched the lives of hundreds of thousands of patients by diagnosing cancer and tumor markers, as well as providing other clinical health diagnoses. Michael is here today to tell us about his harrowing story and his ongoing struggle against government bureaucracy run amok. The Federal Trade Commission has claimed the right to regulate cybersecurity practices, but it's quite a stretch to go from the FTC's stated goal of regulating unfair practices to regulating cybersecurity practices. Indeed, Congress has refused to give the FTC this authority. Despite this, the FTC has persisted in trying to make up its own legal authority on the matter, flexing its muscles, and sadly, often driving U.S. companies into the ground. On that sad note, I'd like to invite Michael to the stage to tell us the rest of his story. Michael?
I think I'm on now. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd like to thank Heritage for the platform and the assistance, especially the last couple of years, because there's a lot of talk in town and a lot of walk in town. And Heritage has walked and helped me a lot, as well as friends. One great friend that's not here because of the Atlanta storm is Steve Penley, who I've known for several years, and his sister Teresa's here helping photograph, and they've been friends for years, and coincidentally they have graced the stage and Heritage with his great artwork, which is so supportive, and as a friend, no pressure. But it is, thank you. It's great to be here for them as well. I also come here just as an American. I come from, I say, a line of unknown faces that just do their work and do their job. I have grandparents that came from Greece and started a small business. I have my father's side came from Ireland and Germany and France, and they were iron workers and labor workers. And my grandfather was quite a pro-union guy almost 100 years ago, believe it or not. I probably would not be under that category now, but things are a little different. And my parents then were police officers in Detroit, and then my mother also taught school in the Internal Revenue Service and worked all over government and private enterprise. So I'm quite a mishmash, and I consider myself an American and a mutt. And part of that then meant I think I was probably bred to be an entrepreneur, and part of the American dream. And that was just building and working and enjoying the opportunities that this country, affords us. So I also want to thank Cause of Action. Cause of Action is a government oversight law firm in D.C. A lot of people came out of Congress and great lawyers and joined Cause of Action to assist the little guy like me from taking on a Leviathan. And without them, I think one of the agendas of draining people like me dry would have been achieved. And I think it's very important that we understand that this story is not about what happened to Mike Dougherty or LabMD. The bigger picture is, how is the government keeping us safe, solving the issues of cybersecurity, am playing with enforcement and what moves they actually make. So I had to decide how to tell my story. I call myself an author by necessity. And so because I felt, here I am encountering the government and at first in shock. Like what could possibly be happening here? So I'm going to just skip over this. And I'll go back to this part, sorry. And so, you know, to be effective, it's not effective to scream and yell and throw a temper tantrum. It's not effective to expect to be the one guy holding a picket sign. I really wanted to be effective. And so I went to San Francisco Writers Conference. I learned how to be a writer. I talked to a lot of writers. And really, I realized we have to tell story, especially if you're writing for change. You have to tell story, because story brings the reader into your shoes, builds empathy, relationship, because it's not effective to run around saying, poor, poor, pitiful me, no matter what the situation is. There's a lot of things that have happened to people, much worse than what has happened to the people that are involved with my organization. But to be effective about this, I had to learn. So I consciously decided to not write like a screaming book. It's written like a thriller, like a novel, where you start with the phone call of what happened and go through step by step. Yet, for credibility, because it's a nonfiction, I had to really footnote it like crazy. Because keep in mind, this started about 2008, and I started writing the book about 2012, before Snowden or NSA was in the lexicon. So I'm thinking to myself, this is so unbelievable. How's anyone going to believe me? So I really had to make it interesting and what I would call edutainment. And this is, in a sad way, a lucky break that we're now so at the forefront of this topic of cybersecurity, and how is the government actually protecting us? And are these actions they're taking protecting us, or are these actions actually making things worse as Snowden walks out with a thumb drive? And what are they doing putting efforts towards a medical facility that might have had an error? So the story starts with a call from a company called Tyversa. And literally, it sounds like a movie, but there was a phone rang, and it's a guy on the phone that says, we've got a file of yours. We have found through a peer-to-peer network a file, and we would like to talk to you about it. So first question is, who are you, and how did you get it? And so they send it over, and we know immediately it is a billing file with 9,000 patients, because it had patient information in it that was only for billing. Now, I'm going to pop up this cryptic, forgive me for not having my slide all beautiful, but I think just foundationally it's easier to get what happens. We're going to discuss the bigger picture. Everyone see this okay? So basically, this is the laboratory, and what I want everyone to understand is this is a peer-to-peer network software, is software that allows you to share files that are in a folder on your workstation. So this is not like your entire network's exposed or you got a virus that got hit, but basically we knew that this is in the billing office. So we have the laboratory, all the data comes in from the patients. When a diagnosis is rendered, the billing data goes to server, and the manager ran a report, and we found this report in this My Documents folder. So this was a vulnerability of one folder on one computer in an entire network that was firewalled. So understand that this is, and in that folder were 900 files that had 860 music files, 40 medical files, all of which were redacted, except for the one file. So there's one file in this entire corporation that's essentially vulnerable. So how the heck they get that? That's what we wanted to know. And how they get through it when we're a relatively young company with all what we consider all the standard protocols, routers, firewalls in place. You know, we're a small company, but we have 4 people on an IT staff. So we asked that question. Who are you? How'd you get it? And right away, and as the book's very documented with the emails, I just didn't trust this immediately. So I had everything in writing, and it was, that will require services agreement. We'll be happy to let you know. I have to pull a Rubio moment here, sorry. But I might have to do several of those, actually. But so we're confused, and this is burning trust right away. And we're not being given any answers. This is 2008. This is May. This goes on for the summer, a couple months of a lot of emails going back and forth. And finally, I said, look, we have remediated this. We knew where it was. We isolated that workstation. We don't know if it got out that way. We still don't know if it got out that way. We can only assume that was the only possibility we found. We shut everything down. We went out looking in cyberspace. We never saw anything. Had staff looking. And so advice to counsel is go away. Call our lawyer if you have anything else to say. And they did call our lawyer later in 2008 and said that they were turning this over to the Federal Trade Commission, that they consider this to be a PHI, and they didn't want to get sued. So we're like, go ahead. So 2009 is relative silence. All that happened in 2009 was we were just looking over our shoulder, wondering what's going on, and who is there any vulnerability still? And we continue to find nothing. So 2010, a happy new year, as we're ready to dive into all these business plans. Right then in January, we get a phone call from the Federal Trade Commission, and they said, we're starting a non-public inquiry. We found out, we understand that we're in possession of a file. Now, I, having worked in medicine for years and years and years, I can tell you that when an irate patient calls and says they're going to call, which doesn't happen all the time at LabMD, but happens, and says they're going to call Medicare, we understand that if they're screaming, yelling, and not credible, they're never going to get anywhere. And usually, that doesn't happen. So when you have someone calling a federal government and there's a response, there's usually a pre-relationship. So the second the FTC is calling, I'm like, Traversa. How are they working with the FTC, or are they? But there's got to be something. But they said, we're going to send you a letter, and the next day, 11 pages, single-spaced, showed up, and it was some letter. And it was incredibly broad. Now, at the same time, from day one, we're like, look, we have done everything we feel that we know to do, and we have outside people and inside staff. So, fine, bring it. Because I have to say, working with the federal government and the state government in licensure for clinical laboratory has been a very positive experience. We're mostly scientists, fact-based. We certainly don't feel like we're under the guise of an audit or persecution at every move we make. So I say we dump trucked everything we had and gave them thousands of pages, and they weren't very happy about that. Several months later, I say they move in a glacial emergent pace. So they want it, but we don't talk to them until March or April, and they're not happy, and 4 rounds go on of dumping information. They keep asking broader and broader questions, and it's just very confusing. Because we're like, you're saying we didn't answer the questions, but we answered the questions. I mean, the lawyer that's invoicing me says, we've answered the question. I don't know what else to do. So this created a lot of tension and the dissolution of trust. And of course, my lawyer probably had dissolution of trust from the very first phone call, but I'm a little more naive. So we got flown up. We flew up on our own dime per their request to Washington, D.C. And I was blown away by the inquisition feel that was going on. And I thought, this is like this was the beginning of my thinking, this is like a movie. This is like NSI. This is crazy. I mean, they're just dead serious and not giving us any information, and we are on the hot seat here. So as a small businessman, I certainly did not have time to crack open my great relationship with the most expensive law firm in the country. I started doing research on my own. And what I learned was that I was shocked to see that I went to the web, and I kept going to Google, but I realized I had to get out of this on my own. So I found a connection I found government testimony from 2007 that had in front of oversight with the Federal Trade Commission and LimeWire, and Wesley Clark sitting there, who's on the advisory board of Tyversa, and Robert Bobick, who is the guy on the phone with us 2 years before, and Dartmouth. And I put together the fact that Homeland Security had, in 2006, had awarded $24 million to Dartmouth to go out and address cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and they used Tyversa's technology, which I wasn't really sure what that was, and I found press releases and testimony announcing the following. And this is I'll read you this press release they sent out. It said, Tyversa today, this is May 8th, 2009. Tyversa today announced the findings of new research that revealed 13 million plus breached files emanating from over 4,310,839 sources on P2P file sharing networks within a 12-month period from March 1st, 08 to March 1st, 09. Now, I find this amazing. If this would have gone out today, this would have gotten picked up, but no one picked this up. The research is based on data and ongoing study by Tyversa, whose patent-pending technology monitors roughly 450 million users, issuing more than 1.5 billion searches per day. The files analyzed include only those identified on behalf of Tyversa's existing customer base. During the 12-month period, it's also important to note that the reference files are business documents only, and were not music, software, and movie files were not included. The new study demonstrates the P2P file sharing risk is not effectively being addressed by the security protocols of Fortune 500 companies and government agencies, as their organizations commonly have exposure across the extended enterprise. I will just jump to the end here. Also identified was a 1,718-page document from a medical testing laboratory. Suddenly I'm feeling famous here. You got to keep in mind, I'm sitting on my couch on a Sunday reading about myself in this, and Wired Magazine, and Dartmouth, and I find our file in the congressional record. I can't impress you how that's surreal to me even as I say it right now. So, I mean, I just want to live in obscurity. I don't need all this. So Tyversa has seen millions of individual records and sensitive files inadvertently being shared by organizations, their agents, key suppliers, and trusted partners. This type of confidential information is continuing to be exposed and risks being used for competitive intelligence, fraud, identity theft, medical identity theft, and criminal gain. Now, I can't tell you how much I agree it's important that we not have these type of leaks all over the world. I'm not quite sure I want a private enterprise doing this type of monitoring. And I'm not sure I appreciate them calling me, not giving any information, unless I hire them because they're in business. And I'm not sure I appreciate the fact that they're helping a study by Dartmouth that's funded by Department of Homeland Security. These factors, the Federal Trade Commission will like us to forget, and they certainly don't sit well with me, and I think they should concern you, especially if a private enterprise is having all this information and another country decides to buy them. So now I'm quite aware, and I have to learn about what's going on and how does the government possibly have this type of power. And I learned all about Section 5 in the Federal Trade Commission Act, because I'm sitting there going, this can't possibly be fair, be right. This can't possibly be what's going on. Why am I being treated like the victim here? And if I am, or the criminal here? And what did we do wrong? And what does the law say that can be done here? And I learned about Section 5. And Section 5 is the FTC Act. The Congress has created this agency and tells them that they have the right to protect consumers from unfairness and deception. Fair enough. The definition of unfairness, however, and deception is evidently quite broad until Congress would help them define that. And I don't think they run to Congress every day saying, could you really tighten it down for us? And I assume the FTC is extremely frustrated with Congress's lack of definition of cybersecurity practices and trying to tighten up what's going on. That's also valid. But in the meantime, we don't get to just apologize later and do whatever we want. However, you know, what I learned was we have the separation of powers of the government, right? We've got the executive branch. And we have the judicial branch, and the Founding Fathers split those, and then they created the legislative branch, and they snapped that in two, so that we've got the House and the Senate. And somewhere along the line, I'm caught in the crosshairs of the fact that they created the government agency and the administrative process, which seems to have allowed these agencies to do whatever they want and just report back later. And in my argument, this then creates an elimination of powers and a fist. And a centralization of power, so that they get to just rip us open looking for that cancer cell and killing the patient in the meantime. So 2007 here in Oversight was their second investigation. And I'm going to read these because you can't read those, I'm going to read this, which little glitch here. I'm going to read this to you off my iPad. Just get this up. As I started to do more homework and learn, we really were shocked by Section 5 and what was going to go on. We are dump trucking more information. It is breathing into 2011. And while I learned what they could do as far as the FTC, everyone was saying, well, you know what, you're so small. I mean, my gosh, you're a medical facility, you detect cancer, you've got 40 employees. I mean, they've got bigger fish to fry. And then late 2010, we had WikiLeaks and Assange. And I thought, well, for sure, they're going to move on to the much larger national security issue. And then I wanted to know what the heck was going on with Tyversa and Dartmouth. And I'm like, look, this isn't just some guy calling on the phone now that wants to be hired for security practices. This is a funded study by Homeland Security. So we sent investigation letters out demanding information again. We wanted to know what method, manner, services, technologies, or parties were utilized. Have you shared the property with LabMD's property with anyone? Do you have financial business relationship with the FTC? Where and when have there been any financial, business, or other relationships between you, Dartmouth, the government? These are the type of things we're just digging for answers, trying to get information which wasn't forthcoming. So at least we put them on notice. And in 2011, we were just hoping they would go away by being cooperative. And I call it in the book being nicey-nicey. You know, there was really nothing to do. I mean, until they come at you, what are you going to do? But it was completely sideswiping the company, sideswiping management, costing a ton of money. We've now learned there's no standards, there are no rules, but we've broken something, they're alleging. So what do? Well, you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars getting the best stuff you can get, because if you want to be sure that it's right, you better go for the top. Well, then you realize that the whole business market of cybersecurity solutions are built for large and medium corporations. So now we're getting to these big companies that never even call on companies our size and getting special bids on compact, you know. And it's always annoying during that whole time where they go, really? What? You didn't do anything wrong, you know. And I'm having to educate everyone, you know, just suspend that. So how am I doing on time here? All right, okay, I really want to get into discussion, so I'm trying to tear through some of this stuff. Hopefully I'll just read the book and really fill in the spots. So while hoping they're going away, I'm still preparing for the fact that maybe they won't. I kept telling my lawyers, I'm not signing anything. And the reason I wasn't going to sign a consent decree, and let me explain the consent decree, I'm sorry, I missed that part. The whole thing was the FTC wants you to sign a consent decree. Well, what is a consent decree? Consent decree is basically a contract. You consent to X and X behavior, and you, buried in the fine print, admit to no wrongdoing. So I'm like, let me get this straight. So there's been about 30 some odd companies by this time, none of them that have had this type of situation. They've all had massive data loss. And they've agreed to 20 years of biannual audits on their own dime, where that also opens into a whole myriad of what else they can do as far as fining. Whereas right now, you get a cease and desist. And cease and desist what? Now still there's the constant lawyer recommendation, which is not necessarily wrong in many instances, to just look, this is a beast bigger than you, they have more power than you know, take your licks, sign it, move on. The problem was this was a lose-lose situation. On the one choice, I had a 20-year consent decree that with what I call a reputation assassinating press release from the FTC that is then going to tell my surgeons and their patients, well, LabMD has to go through all this, but they admit no wrongdoing. And I have all these very aggressive, and let me tell you, in medical world and surgery, it's a relatively aggressive sales situation. I have a lot of competitors who are going to go, hey, did you see that LabMD agreed to being to 20 years of audits by the Federal Trade Commission. I mean, come on, it's the whole, they're there must be something wrong stuff. I mean, you might as well just slap guilty on my head. And I love the press releases they put out that really read between the lines, you know, who's going to pay attention to the whole detail here, right? So that was just not an option. I mean, to me, that was already death. And so I thought I'd rather take my pain up front. And let's see if they're going to go away. And maybe they will. Everyone kept saying they would. But no matter what, I said, I am not signing a consent decree, period, which no lawyer believed me till the moment actually came. And so the moment came after more questions, more repackaging, it's like, I call it Christmas regifting. Answer the question over, the same. And I thought, are they asking these questions 7 times because they want to trip us up? Now we're starting to verge into psychological warfare because they have unlimited resources. I mean, these guys got something to do if they keep doing this. So, you know, we don't want to stop that. And the growth of government, you know, is just a lovely thing to observe. And so then I get a call that I've been expecting after spending thousands of dollars in lawyer fees again. Well, unfortunately, the FTC wants to go into a consent decree negotiations, which I have to tell you, I hope I'm right that this is the first time in probably decades I heard the word no. They were very shocked I wouldn't even negotiate. That caught them off guard. We immediately changed firms, and then that was the first time the cat's out of the bag to them. Until 2011, I think they thought, well, this Doherty character is just a small punk in Atlanta, and they'll just roll over and we'll move online. And it's just business as usual. So I'm sure I'm quite a pain to the Federal Trade Commission, and this was just the beginning of that. So, so then we start with the machinations, which is the battle lines, right? And so just before this, I had consciously asked them, is there anything else you need? No. Well, suddenly, once I said, no, I'm not going to have any negotiating, any consent decree games, the Friday before Christmas, and let me tell you, the Federal Trade Commission loves to hit you just before a major holiday. It's another favorite game. So the 23rd of December at 4:30, I get a civil investigative demand, which in layperson's terms is a subpoena on steroids, because they have to talk to me. And so we start fighting every step of the way. And so that went on for 14 months of having to finally get to federal court to argue if we can sit for a CID. Well, part of that is then laying out the administrative state and the games that they play. Maybe they don't like them called games. But the first thing you do is you have to file. To get to federal court, the judiciary has basically said you have to go through all the administrative processes. So I'm like, well, let's just let the kangaroos hop and let's just get through them. So we started putting a motion to quash. Motion to quash their request. That has to go to the commissioner that is running this show of the 5 commissioners. And for those of you who don't know, you can have 3 of one party and 2 of another party. So typically we have a Democratic administration right now, so we have 3 Democratic commissioners, 2 Republican, and we apply to quash. And it goes to Julie Brill, who's covering this. And big shock, they're not going to quash it. But I knew this. But I also said, I want to go to my hearing. And I was shocked to be told, you can't attend your hearing probably. What? What do you mean I can't attend my hearing? Well, put that in writing then. I want it in writing that I can't attend my hearing, because if I walk up on the street and tell an American I can't attend my own hearing, they're going to think there's something wrong with me. They're not going to believe that, so I had to get it in writing. So we couldn't attend our own hearing. And then we appealed to the full commission, because that's the next step. And we got a lucky break. We had 1 Republican abstain, as if you consider that lucky. And we had 1 Republican actually say the following, which is, I am concerned that Tyversa is more than an ordinary witness, informant, or whistleblower. It is a commercial entity that has financial interest in intentionally exposing and capturing sensitive files on computer networks, and a business model of offering its services to help organizations protect against similar infiltrations. Indeed, in the instant matter, an argument has been raised that Tyversa used its robust, patented peer-to-peer monitoring technology to retrieve the 1,718-page file, and then repeatedly solicited LabMD, offering investigative and remediative services regarding the breach long before commission staff contacted LabMD. So in my view, there appears to be nothing per se unlawful about this evidence. The commission should avoid even the appearance of bias or impropriety by not relying on such evidence or information in this investigation. Now, unfortunately, 1 out of 4 ain't bad. And that was at least a glimmer of hope against this Leviathan. And 13 was book writing, pre-marketing, and then Snowden and the NSA coming up. So we have, because at this point I thought, I'm never going to win this thing through any sort of judicial process. What this is unbelievable, and lay people like me don't know it. And I'm telling you, most lawyers in D.C. don't know a lot of specifics, but a lot in the government do. And I get this, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, but it's okay. It's not okay. So I just sort of went on semi-sabbatical and started writing the story, and know this would take a long time. And then I kept doing more research on what's going on, because this just seems so out of sync with the rest of what was going on in the world, and it's a cybersecurity issue. Because by this time, you know, Obamacare is starting to hit. My clients are getting really upset. Cybersecurity leaks are not exactly a shock, and I'm certainly getting full support from any clients, employees. I mean, it's been nothing more but like, we're so sorry for you, and a big eye roll. But what I discovered later was the following, that is also disturbing, and maybe not is what is motivating the FTC. But I discovered in 2002 that there was a user and P2P usability and privacy study done by 2 Hewlett-Packard scientists. And basically they said that these P2P softwares that are out there, this is kind of post-Napster, are intentionally leaking files and fooling the users, and it's dangerous. And so, in 2003, we had the Senate and the House, and the first oversight meeting, talk to the Federal Trade Commission and say, get this fixed, basically fix it. And so the FTC started a voluntary code of conduct that they had the 6 or so P2P software manufacturers or developers sign, so that they would not have this so vulnerable. So in 2004, the FTC testifies that these leaks have appeared to decrease. And we're not talking leaks of one file here. We're talking leaks from the Pentagon, Department of Defense. Homeland Security is wondering what the heck's going on. And my general impression on this is, if you remember after 9/11, one thing that the public all found out is that we would assume that different government agencies actually speak to each other, and they don't. So I assume that Department of Defense and Homeland Security are wondering what the heck is going on. Users of the software, government employees, are leaking things all over the place, and it's making us very unsafe. And so 2005, Homeland Security gets involved, and they're finding hundreds of thousands of things out. They're finding employees working with clearances, working from home. You know, one woman had peer-to-peer software on her computer, doing remote work into, I think it was the Pentagon. I could be wrong, but the point was, her kid had put that software on the machine. So you have software that is trained to dupe, according to U.S. Patent and Trade Office, because they get involved going, what the hell is going on with peer-to-peer software? And they put a paper saying there are features in this that are intentionally inducing users to share. So yes, you can have our one file of our whole company inadvertently put into that folder. And it might have gotten out, but I can assure you no employee of my company intentionally did it. I can assure you the public doesn't know about this. I can assure you the government has hundreds of thousands of things leaking, and this is not a solution to the problem of our safety as Snowden walks out with a thumb drive. So what we have now is head on the spike justice, because Congress has created an agency that is self-policing, self-rulemaking, and in this current litigation, acting as judge, jury, and prosecutor. And that type of fist is what, A, empowers government to run amok, but it doesn't keep us safer. Because while this is going on, they're allowing the software that perhaps let that one file go out continue. Had they done their job, I wouldn't be standing here, and I'd be really happy not to be standing here. And the judiciary and the Congress are complicit in this, because the judiciary validates the administrative process, makes you go through it before you get to court, and there's low standards of investigation, reasonable, plausible, burdensome. This is opinions. This is like, can we make pretty or ugly legal? So basically, right now, the Federal Trade Commission has sued my company in August of 2013 and has carpet-bombed us with almost 40 subpoenas, employees that left the company in 2007. My personal assistant just got subpoenaed yesterday. This is a question of what's the point, what's the benefit of to the country? Is this the best use of taxpayer dollars? This is about power. This is not about LabMD. This has become, because I've stood up and said, no, you can't conduct yourself this way, this has become a much bigger issue about the power of a government agency to do what they want, when they want, and how they want. And I will say that, and I'll finish up pretty quick here. Commissioner Wright, who just came on and took Roush's place, gave a talk, 16, and these are his own words. But he talked about the Section 5 problem, uncertainty surrounding scope of Section 5. It's exasperated by the administrative process, advantages available to the FTC. The deck is so stacked in their favor, folks, that good luck getting to court. I mean, it's so much time and effort and money to get up there. If cause of action wasn't assisting me right now, you can forget it. In the past 20 years, the FTC has ruled in favor of staff on appeal 100% of the time. And the win rate for antitrust plaintiffs appealing from district courts is closer to 50. So that's an interesting gap. So the two hypotheses are, from Wright, the commission expertise over private plaintiffs is picking winning cases, or institutional and procedural advantages for the commission and the administrative adjudication. Thank you. Treatment of FTC decisions by courts of appeal puts expertise hypothesis into doubt. No kidding. We get the picture. So here I stand, appreciative of Heritage and everyone watching, to listen to the story, because it's not really, it certainly is about me, for me and my employees. And the victims are my employees. We just wind down operations. I had the terrible experience of laying off 20 people a couple weeks ago. This has been an unbelievable battle, but it is incredibly important. It is a big time important that we understand that if we're going to be safe from cybersecurity intrusions, we have to spend our efforts and time getting in front of the criminals, not trying to assert our turf wars as government agencies, enforce laws that don't exist when Congress hasn't made them yet, and in the meantime, let us be left safe. So please join the conversation. I'm going to get hit here because I didn't mention Twitter or Facebook about 20 minutes ago, but we're all over Twitter and Facebook. and I'll be happy to talk a while and answer your questions.
Microphones in the back, so if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and the microphone will be brought to you. I'll take the host prerogative here and ask the first question, which is just to ask, how aware of this issue is Congress? Has the FCC, has any member in particular taken up an interest in this?
Well, I mean, I've been on the Hill a lot. I've spent the last 2-3 years in Washington trying to relationship build. That's how I actually came to Heritage, and I've been to a lot of other places in town as well. And I have a joke that says, the fastest way to get someone to run from you in D.C. is to say, help me, save me. So, and usually you'll get injuries. So I've not been expecting any specific representative to come to my rescue in fairness to them. However, I have spoken to Ted Cruz. I have spoken to Tom Price. I have been in front of oversight. ICE's office has probably 5 copies of the book. It gets passed around. I've spoken to Senate Commerce Committee and the House. So they're quite aware, and I've actually got emails that they're watching. Some of them might. I don't think any staffers here, but no, it is. But I also, I really have to impart the fact that I do think this is a much bigger topic than just me, and that's where I come to them from. I'm not disappointed in any congressman because they haven't come and slapped the FTC down yet, although I hope we can get a hearing soon.
My name is Spence.
Is that on?
I'm not sure.
I can hear.
My name is Spence Berry from the International Center for Law and Economics, and my question is done a little bit of study on the FTC's data security practices, and one of the administrative adjudication things is that, in a normal court, a plaintiff has to be able to get past a motion to dismiss before they can get discovery. It's very expensive once they can get to discovery, and everybody's almost, a large amount of people settle, even in private cases, if you get past discovery. In administrative adjudications, they can actually impose all the discovery costs up front. And I guess my question was, how much do you estimate that you spent answering the FTC's request, even before the CIDs, but especially including the CIDs?
Well, all right. Well, first of all, every time you go talk like this, you always forget you can't get every single point. And I'm so glad you asked that question. Let's get the other point I forgot. And one of the things that we've spent $500,000. Just in lawyers, 6 figures, and also playing the guessing game of what they want, because they won't tell you what they want. Ask the FTC what they want. They show you someone else's consent decree. That's it. Why? They have no standards. Every time I talk to the press, I say, you want to get them upset? Ask them about standards. They don't like that. We want to make it up as we go along. And part of that also is discovery, because the courts let them go on a fishing expedition. Because there's a plausible reason. Like the cow flew over the moon. So there's a plausible maybe, but even though this is the real world. So the other thing that I want people to understand is, in this discovery process, every time we file a motion to dismiss, it has to go to the Federal Trade Commission. Well, that's why I talked about court, judge, jury, and prosecutor. So, and it's interesting to me the media doesn't pick this up. They just they put a story out a couple days ago about my case. It said FTC, says something about HIPAA is not, FTC doesn't trump HIPAA here, or can work in alignment with HHS. The point isn't that. The point is, does anyone getting that the Federal Trade Commission is acting as a judge here? That's the deal. We want to subpoena someone, we have to go to the FTC office and get them to sign off on it. We file a motion to dismiss, they get it, not the judge. We file a motion to quash, they get it, not the judge. This type of stuff is so surreal. If I didn't have it in writing, you wouldn't believe me, because I'm the victim, and victims immediately get their credibility cut in half. So thank goodness, one of the reasons I wrote this book is so much of this is in writing. It's chilling and scary, but it's very necessary to know that Congress, to me, abdicates their responsibility by creating these behemoths that go ahead and do these things. And if it wasn't for cause of action that understood how we can't have our citizenry pummeled like this, I probably would be on the side of the street a lot earlier as well. So no, it is. Its discovery is unbelievable. But that's, so far they all line up and say, oh well. I will say that most staffers and most congressmen currently don't even understand this, and that's because the FTC doesn't want to really get in front of them.
Question right here. We'll take that one first and then this one.
With the Washington Free Beacon. Just wondering how the Affordable Care Act in general has affected either the cybersecurity issue from a medical perspective or the way the federal government goes about the problem.
Well, I think, all right, briefly, I could go on for that for another 6 hours. I think that when you have people with power without specific knowledge, we get the mess we're in. This is just one example. Affordable Care Act has limited resources greatly. So we have a rule over here, but we have less blood in the beast over here. So you have less money. The Affordable Care Act has consolidated medicine. So my client base is evaporating into hospitals or mega groups. This then is, and because resources are disappearing and profit margins are shrinking, and then you have practitioners that are not businessmen or cyber experts. And then you have companies that don't really have the products there yet. So I think it's creating an unrealistic burden in the short run. And when you see situations like mine happen, it is very scary to practitioners in medicine, which is why government health IT said this was such a big case because it's going to affect the future of healthcare privacy. Like HHS isn't enough for us to deal with. We have to have the Federal Trade Commission now. At least HIPAA has specific rules and guidelines. This make it up as you go along stuff, unacceptable. I should be spending my time diagnosing cancer. Not having to play guessing games with an agency that won't tell me what they want, but will drag me through this if I don't do what they'll decide later. So I think the Affordable Care Act has just increased the burden on an already very burdened medical system.
Are we going to go right here first, and then we'll go over there? Right down here.
Right here.
Thanks. Edward Hutchins from the Atlas Society, as in Atlas Shrugged.
Atlas.
First of all, thanks for diagnosing the cancer here in Washington, which is just as valuable a service as what you're doing in Atlanta. My question is this. I know that you had, for example, a hearing before an administrative judge in September. I read through that material. I think you just gave a deposition the last couple of days, perhaps. Given that you're winding the company down, what happens if your company at some point in the future disappears? Does the FTC disappear and everything going on disappear? Is that kind of where it is going right now?
Well, that would be a dirty, rotten shame.
Yes.
And we certainly hope not. That's a question for the Federal Trade Commission. But I can assure you if that happened, they would be hearing from me. Because that will be, so you're just happy now that the beast is dead, we can move on. This is not about LabMD. This is about what are you doing? And who are you, and what are the rules, and let's show the process to the world. Step up, baby, let's go. So I hope not, but the company's not bankrupt. It's not dissolved. It is just, I call it in a coma. We are still interacting with patients and physicians. We have diagnosed between 700,000 and 900,000 patients. We have all these records we must keep for 10 years. We still have, billing and things going on. And I don't know, I said the FTC made us chronically ill, and Obamacare really pulled the plug on any option to continue in taking specimens because they cut our reimbursement so much a year ago. But I also know that I have huge loyalty within the medical community and a lot of goodwill, and that's my tribe. And so I'm not saying we won't be back. It's just that I couldn't fight the battle and be a good practicing company at the same time.
We're going to go there and then back there.
Yeah, I'm Brian Fortson, third-year law student at Georgetown. I'm really impressed with your Penley paintings, but I have a two-part question. Number one, when you first got the letter inquiry, did you wish you would have just played ball and not have to deal through this? And my second question is, I think this would be a great movie. Who would you like to play yourself?
That's a plant. That guy's not from Georgetown. But I didn't plant him. But great question, Brian. I'm never sorry about this. I mean, I'm sorry what happened. I'm absolutely not sorry about this. This has been, what happened to LabMD is not okay. What happened to me, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, when you decide to be an entrepreneur, death is at your door every day, and you roll with the punches. And that's the great thing about this country. Because I look at here, look at this. I'm standing here. I've had dinner with Ted Cruz. How awesome is that? So I've walked through the Senate and the House. I have met a ton of people all over the place, and I have talked to movie producers, and I've written a book. I mean, and reporters. I mean, I'm living the American dream. I feel really sorry for people that worked for me that got sideswiped by this. practitioners that now have to seek other laboratories. We really had a great lab. We just finished our federal inspection. We got perfect score. Our proficiency testing, we're 100% again. I mean, you know, our core competency was right there. So, and who play me in the movie? People laugh. They say that to me all the damn time, and I'll honestly tell you that it's either they say Kevin Spacey or Greg Kinnear, but I don't really care as long as I get a cut of the profits. Anyway.
There's a question back there.
Hi, I'm Diane Katz. I'm a research fellow here in regulatory policy. We hear often of large corporations settling with the government in order to avoid, you know, drawn-out litigation. And even though they don't admit guilt, they pay huge, you know, extortionary types of fines. But from their standpoint, I suppose they're saving shareholders, you know, the expense, and
Right.
they're trying to, you know, move on with their core mission, which is business.
Right.
But at the same time, it enables, if you will, agencies to continue to do this sort of thing, especially against smaller businesses, which don't have that same kind of, you know, clout at their disposal. So how do we get out of that cycle of, you know, this payoff and extortion that the government is doing?
You know, that I knew very early on that I was kind of a perfect storm guy in this because I have the resources, and I have, I don't know, I've learned later that because of my parents' background, I think I was born for this. So when you're raised by two police officers, I think you have a natural outrage from something like this going on from the beginning. But I also know that big corporations have fiduciary duties and they have shareholders, and I don't. I don't have a board. I'm a private company. I can stand up to this and say no on their behalf and try to educate people on how this hurts us, not me, hurts the public. And now I've got this great example. Snowden walked out with a thumb drive. What the hell's going on? And I think that's really important that we take this one example and run with it. This is, you know, I am just one example. The motivation can't be, you know, oh, poor Mike, my God, let the whole world rally around LabMD. That's not quite it. I need to hear from other corporations, and if they're not going to, there are many people that are afraid of IRS audits, more FTC stuff. I'm a member of the Federalist Society. I've been on a lot of panels, and after I've talked to some of these lawyers who go, you know, no one will talk about it. And I understand that, but I know that I was in a situation where I could be the conduit, I could take the heat, and I could talk about it. So I think I'm a one shot, but not one example. And so hopefully the press will dive into this. That's why I document the book so much.
All right,
Thanks.
time for one more question right down here.
Osma Tomsovic, Central and East European Coalition. My heritage is East European. With what's going on in the government, it sounds like what my parents told me about, the very controlling and all that. But my question is, how can we best fight these? My first impression was overwhelm these government agencies with fictitious information or something. With limited funds, how can we fight them? What can we do that would be effective?
I mean, I think my story is a great experience. My experience has been great that I've sit here and come to town and met people, as long as you don't yell and scream and are very nice, and gotten in and told my story as a concern for the country and not just myself. I think that I don't underestimate calling your congressman. Don't underestimate getting involved. Don't underestimate, you know, don't let them scare you into assuming you're powerless, because we're not. So I think the biggest thing is understanding that, you know, join Heritage, join whoever you want to join, go out on your own. You know, I mean, you don't have to just join Heritage because I'm more right center here. I mean, if you join the ACLU, just do whatever you want, but get involved. And I think that type of thing, don't underestimate it. And, you know, you meet great people. It's a good time. This has been I don't want to let them know it's okay, but I mean, this has been life-changing for me and primarily positive, except for what's happened to my employees and patients. Yes. Sure.
What's the accountability of Traversa in this? I mean, he's basically blackmailing you, saying, if you don't pay this exorbitant consultant fee to me, I'm going to turn you into that.
Well, I don't know yet. They're suing me for slander because of the book. So there's a lawsuit out there you can go look for.
It's not slander if it's true.
But but we have a process going on, and so I think that's a great question for them. But as the story goes out, we'll find that out. But if it wouldn't have been just for them, I wouldn't have written the book. But I have to say, Dartmouth's involvement and Department of Homeland Security and what contractors do, and that's the bigger picture.
All right, with that, I'd like to thank Michael for coming to tell us his story. If you have not gotten one of the softcover books, they are available for free outside, and Michael will
Yeah,
be signing.
I'll be
right
signing.
here at the desk. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.